Here we are ready to do a little stuffing. So this is Gnumpkin, and in a few minutes I'm actually going to show you what Gnettle looks like after stuffing and after the indents, so you can kind of see what we're stuffing and what's going to all happen. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little tiny circle of cardboard up and into the stem of Gnumpkin here. It fits inside the pearl circle that we have on the top of his little stem hat here. And that just pops it out really nicely. It just behaves so well. And then as we stuff, it will continue to be a nice flat top there. So that's what's going to happen there. We're going to stuff the hat loosely, and then we're going to stuff the body really firmly, and it's going to be large. You're going to be looking at this going, this is a very tallish kind of pumpkin. But what's going to happen after we stuff it and then do the indents, it's going to shrink up a lot as we sort of use the yarn to make the segments really pop. So you can see what's going to happen here is there's going to be a really big shift from being tall to being a pumpkin. So just be aware that's going to happen, and we're going to use more stuffing than you think we normally would. As ever, I encourage you to stuff with less stuffing to start than you think you're going to need. It is easier to get lumps with more stuffing. So put a little bit in, and I'll work it up into the hat. We just need the hat to be stuffed enough that it kind of does, it just holds its own shape in terms of a 3D shape. We don't need to really worry about it being full and stiff. We do want to keep the little pucker that happened in the 2 pinch rounds. So just kind of stuff, but don't overstuff. This is something where you can let your own taste be the guide. One thing I do at all times when stuffing is I use the outside hand to sort of feel, to make sure that the way it feels on the inside feels the same way. I think lumps develop when some parts are extra thick and some parts are thinner. Then the difference between the thick sections and the fluffier sections kind of plays up over time. So if, as I'm feeling here, I can feel that there's a particularly dense part, I can use both my inside hand and my outside hand to kind of like play around and get the density to the point where it's the same for all of the part that we are stuffing. If you want it to be a particular way, you can also just take a little bit more yarn and kind of run it along here and just tug it and tighten it and sew it in and just generally make it do what you want. And then we're going to stuff half of the body quite firmly. And once we're done, there will be a chance to kind of like move the hat around and kind of mush stuffing down into the body if you need to or whatever. All right, so the body we're going to stuff quite full. We want it to be quite stiff. So we're going to be taking a long length of yarn coming from the center and coming in at the top and coming back out at the center and coming up at the top and in at the center. And we're going to be tightening as we go. And you can actually see the yarn kind of showing through here in this one. And it's going to be piercing, or not really piercing, but it's going to be sliding down that pearl channel and biting into the segments to try to divide it. So this needs to be fairly thick and rigid so that it can hold up to what we're about to do to it. When you are stuffing though, you do want to make sure that you're stuffing in a way that doesn't distort the fabric. You don't want the fabric to suddenly get a lot wider in its gauge, but it is possible to stuff and stuff and stuff, and through compaction you get you force it to be in a small space rather than forcing it to be wider and bigger. You do want it to be circular shaped, so make sure that you don't have like one segment and then this like that. You want it to be even everywhere. And then there's a few more very rapid decreases we work before we finish stuffing. Gnumpkin and Gnettle do not need weighted stuffing because they are so bottom heavy. They will not tip. They are really stable all on their own. If I've overstuffed this, it's going to make doing the decreases a little hard. I've probably overshot it in my hopes to really show you what we're doing, but all right. But you can still see that the fabric is not sort of stretched out. As soon as I started knitting, I realized I'd overstuffed it. It was way too hard to work. So I pulled out a bunch of stuffing and worked those decreases. And now what we're going to do is we've got a small opening and we're going to try to stuff the whole body now before our final decrease round. So just keep putting the stuffing in, keep focusing on making it so that the feeling of the stuffing is uniform throughout. So I'll put stuffing in and then I will use my thumb and fingers, or just in this case my 2 fingers, to try to push it around so that there aren't spots where it's really understuffed. So we're pushing it around every time we add a new bit. It is easier to make it unlumpy if you think about stuffing it in layers, kind of like filling it with a layer of tortillas rather than just a bag of apples. The bag of apples will obviously be lumpier. To try to get this into a fairly rounded shape. Obviously, we slowly increased here and we rapidly decreased here. So there will be a little bit of a tapering shape, like this angle will be slower than this angle, and that's okay, but try to get things roughly rounded and everything. We don't want this to be too sharp of an angle, or the nose and other things we're going to put on are just going to make the brim pop. So that's part of why this has this slower angle here. I have managed to stuff an absolutely shocking amount of stuffing into Gnumpkin without distorting the fabric. He is very firm. There's very little compression that would happen here compared to a standard gnome. He's got a lot of heft to him. You can see that my body is really quite big. We're talking grapefruit size ball here, but go with what feels right to you and what seems sensible to the shape and the fabric that you've got in front of you. Those of you doing a DK version from the knit along, I don't have a shape guide for you, but do use a lot of stuffing and make it firm. Get this nice and good at resisting, and you'll see why in our next video.